Hey everyone, today we're going to be talking about proteins. By the end of this, you should be able to describe the function of proteins, the building blocks, the structure, as well as how to test for them. If you don't have your notebook out, go ahead and get it out. Your title can be proteins. One thing I want to talk to you about before we get started is the fact that a lot of us think of like meat and cheese and eggs as protein, which is correct. But the other thing we have to think about is that in biology, we learn proteins are molecules that are made by cells and they look like this. So how do we reconcile the two? They're actually the same thing. Meat and cheese and eggs are made out of these proteins that your cells have created. Remember, DNA codes for proteins. So all of these types of different foods have proteins, these molecules in them. Second, look at these pictures. Let me know what letters are found in proteins. What elements from the periodic table are found in proteins? These are all pictures of proteins here. You should have gotten that all of them contain C for carbon, H for hydrogen, O for oxygen, and N for nitrogen. So go ahead and write that down. C for carbon, H for hydrogen, O for oxygen, N for nitrogen. So you'll remember we've talked about carbohydrates, we've talked about fats. Those just had CHO, C-H-O. Proteins have CHON, C-H-O-N. So this N here, this nitrogen, is new. When we talk about proteins, they have building blocks, just like all of our other big molecules we've been talking about. The building block here is an amino acid. You should remember when we talked about DNA, we talked about DNA being the code for amino acids or for proteins. On the right here is a picture of one amino acid. You'll also remember we talked about this R group that makes all the amino acids different. Okay, there's lots of different amino acids. Just think of it as like Lego blocks. There's lots of different colors of Legos and lots of different shapes and sizes, but we can connect them all together and then eventually create a big protein. So here's an example. This is not a complete protein. Usually proteins are very, very big, but this gives you an idea. It has a couple of these connected together, okay? So proteins are made out of amino acids. Now, what are some examples here? Okay, where do we find them in our bodies? Why do we need them? Well, we need them for enzymes, right? Enzymes, things that end in ACE, like DNA polymerase, okay? We also learned about helicase that unwinds the DNA. Anything that ends in ACE is going to be an enzyme. And enzymes are those helper molecules. They help get things done in the cell and help speed up stuff. In our cell membrane unit, we talked about receptors and channels, right? Here's an example of a channel in the cell membrane. It's going to let molecules in and out of the cell. That's made of protein. Antibodies, you may have heard a lot of this in the news when they're talking about viruses. Your body makes antibodies to fight against viruses, and these are made of proteins. We have hemoglobin. Hemoglobin's found in your red blood cells, and it's responsible for carrying oxygen. So remember, oxygen needs to get all around your body, all around your cells, and your red blood cells carry oxygen, and in order to carry it, they need this special molecule called hemoglobin. And then proteins also form the structure of a lot of different things. For example, your fingernails and your hair, those are made out of proteins. So I like to think of proteins as kind of like the miscellaneous or the junk drawer. They have lots and lots of different functions. There's not just one function that they have, many different types. So take a look at this picture. I want you to tell me two different foods that you see in this picture. These are all foods that have protein. So go ahead and write down at least two examples of foods that you see in this picture. So some of the examples here, and I just wrote a few, okay? Meat, including fish, chicken, beef, dairy, right? So like your milk and cheese, eggs. You'll see nuts here. Nuts have protein. You'll see some dried beans. Oops. Okay, so like if you like black beans or refried beans, those have protein. Some grains like oatmeal have a little bit of protein, but not a ton. So let's take a look. Which of these are proteins? We have A, B, C, D. Remember that proteins have to have the letters C-H-O-N. So go ahead and take a look and see which of these have C-H-O-N. There's only one. A is the only one that has C-H-O-N. You might have gotten tripped up by this R here. Don't worry about the R. The R just means the rest of the molecule, so you can always ignore that, okay? This long, skinny molecule only has CHO, CHO, so it doesn't have an N. It's not a protein. This guy doesn't have an N. He also has a P. Proteins can't have a P. They can only have CHON. And then this guy doesn't have an N either. Remember, this is a hexagon and it has CHO, so that would be a carbohydrate. Now you try. Take a look at these. Which of them have which of them have CHON for protein? And tell me, how many of these are proteins? All right, only one. This guy down here has CHON, okay? So proteins don't have a specific shape like we talked about carbohydrates, right? This is an example of a carbohydrate. It just has CHO, okay? There's no N here. But we said carbohydrates have hexagon shape oftentimes. Proteins could be lots of different shapes. We just have to look for CHON. This one doesn't have an N, and this one doesn't have an N either. All right, last thing we got to write down is how do we test for proteins? Okay, something called a Biuret test. Okay, the reason it's called Biuret test is because it's called the Biuret solution. All right, some scientist decided to name this. He probably named it after himself. And maybe his last name was Biuret. I'm actually not sure. But the chemical that we use to do this test is called Biuret. So if we have proteins present, basically we drop some of the solution in. If we have proteins present, it will turn purple, okay? And if there aren't any proteins, it will stay blue. So the solution itself is blue. So when we drop it in, basically it turns whatever we have blue because it's already blue. So make sure you write this down. If you're one of the people that likes to color things and you want to draw a picture and you've got markers and colored pencils and can color this, that works as well. So let's do one example, okay? Cindy Lou Who crushes up some bread in a test tube and adds Biuret solution. She gets the following result. Does the bread contain protein? Yes or no? So in this example, it's blue. And if we go back to our notes here, blue means that proteins are absent. So Cindy Lou Who's bread does not have protein in it. And that's how you do the test.